Begin early on the afternoon of January 19th, 1991, a day that Boston Air Traffic Controller Guy Mercier will never forget.
So then you have to basically use your
Yeah, there was no way to get out. I got you.
After you have or encounter an incident such as I encountered, it's kind of like almost a death in the family. And no one really says anything to you because it's a professional environment, but everyone kind of feels bad and says, ooh, something must have happened.
Okay, we're all set? You set?
All set to go.
Okay.
In the Northeast, the weather's always changing by the hour. I issued a clearance off the ground off of Montpelier, Vermont to a pilot, letting him know that there was some severe conditions on his routing. He was climbing to his assigned altitude and got about 20 miles southwest of the airport and started encountering some severe weather conditions. The clouds are really low, and I'm controlling aircraft above him and below him, so he needs a clearance to climb through those clouds.
Tower 777 Charlie Lima, climb maintain 8,000. I have routing for you after Albany. Advise when you're ready to go. Okay, right. There's clouds up here. I got light mixed ice. They're about 7,000 to 9,000. Okay, thank you.
He was getting a little bit of icing. The problem when icing builds up on your wings is that when the plane starts slowing down, the performance is not there, and if you don't get out of the icing, the pilot has to do a forced landing wherever he is.
Okay. 7-7 Charlie Lima, you on top at 8? Negative, I'm going at 8,000.
I realized the top of the ceiling was around 8,500. So if he got at 10,000 feet, he'd be in the clear.
Lima, climb maintain 10,000.
I issued a clearance to climb to 10,000 feet, and I noticed that the pilot wasn't climbing. In fact, he started descending.
I want all other aircraft to stand by, please. Except Charlie Lima, go ahead. Are you in trouble also? Go ahead. Okay, you said you need lower? You're starting to get very gobbled, sir. It might be because of the icing you picked.
Yeah, how about some place to go here?
Would you like to turn around and go to Rutland? Are you comfortable with an LDA approach?
He was flying over a small airport off of his left wing, and I asked him if he wanted to land there. And the pilot said yes.
Establish maintain 6,000. Okay, you're going to need assistance shooting that approach, sir, or you're going to look it up in your chart. Do you have that chart on?
Conditions worsened as the aircraft approached the airport.
At 777 Charlie Lima, your radar contact is lost. Radar contact is lost, and suggest...
He had gone below our radar coverage.
Are you receiving the localizer at all? Yeah, localizer's in and out, sir. What is your altitude now? About 5.5. Okay, sir, you should be safe at 5.5 there.
From the 777 Charlie Lima, are you able to maintain at least 5.5 or climb to 6?
Negative, I'm down to 4.2 now, guys.
He is in trouble now. The mountains are around 5,500 feet in that area.
777 Charlie Lima, what are your flight conditions now?
We lost communications with him when he was on the approach, and when we made phone calls to Rutland Airport after we lost communications, they said no aircraft landed there.
On the way back home from Vermont, the single-engine plane that pilot Mark Maltz and his friend and instructor Jared Healy were flying went down. Air traffic control called Jared's wife Elizabeth in New Jersey to tell her what had happened.
Hello, this is Elizabeth speaking. Can I help you?
And they said, well, Jerry encountered ice. We lost him on radar. And
What?
he went down in the mountains.
Oh, my God.
And then it dawned on me that there was a really big possibility that he wasn't coming back at all.
As usual, the all-volunteer Civil Air Patrol was called in to help search for the missing plane. Colonel Robert Johnson was in charge.
If an airframe is intact, if the weather is relatively mild, And if there are no injuries, there is still only a 50% chance of survival.
Plot these for me, if you will. Let me know if they're 49.
The impact of a crash or even a hard landing will activate the emergency locator transmitter. We can pick it up on our direction finding equipment both on the ground and from the air, but we weren't receiving the normal emergency locator transmitter sound from the downed aircraft. The aircraft that has gone down looks about the size of a subcompact car, and below tree line, rarely can you see anything. Of course, it was winter, so it became dark very early.
They said they had to stop the search because of the weather. And I just continued to wait and continued to wait, and he didn't return. And then I started thinking about all the things that he used to say when he used to do rescues. What echoed through my mind the whole time was people who crashed in the mountains were never found. They were just found when the snow thawed out.
Welcome to Killington, Bear Mountain, Outer Limits.
Around noon the next day, Scott Frundlish and Fred Mallett happened to be skiing the trails at Vermont's Killington Mountain.
We were just getting our last runs. We were going to knock off at lunchtime.
Let's rest up a second.
We decided to take the Juggernaut Trail, which was, looked like a very easy trail. We didn't want to get hurt or anything.
Take a break for a second here. Had a workout. Somebody yelling up there? Yeah, I just heard it.
We heard somebody yelling for help.
Hello! Hello!
It was almost as if I was imagining myself hear it. That's how faint it was, but we did hear it.
We couldn't tell where it was really coming from. We just knew it was coming from the right side of the trail.
Whoa, where are you?
And we decided to go in the woods, but before we went in, we set our skis down right where we entered, so it was a good marker.
A guy comes down behind us, and we tell him to let the ski patrol know that we heard somebody yelling for help and just to follow our tracks in.
Where are you? Keep yelling.
We kept trying to maintain voice contact to lead us there.
We're getting closer.
The snow was just about knee deep, and with ski boots on, it was very difficult.
Keep yelling. We're almost there.
Ski Patrol member Bill Belmonte responded to the call for help.
At first, I didn't hear anything, but I did see the two sets of skis sticking in the snow and tracks leading into the woods. And I just figured that some skiers had gone off trail and couldn't find their way back.
What's going on up there? What happened? All right, we're coming.
We were that close now we could hear, that he was in a plane crash and that, he wasn't alone. And it kind of got our adrenaline pumping, and, now we were freaking out, a little bit. It's like, wow, I can't believe this.
It's up in the tree. I see on top of the ridge.
I could see the plane wing caught up in a big branch, and I could see all the trees were knocked down. They were all burned out. And I looked right below the tree, and I could see him standing there.
Do you see me yet?
He was just really glad to see us. I just remember that big smile he had.
Pretty bad.
He was hugging me, and I didn't want to hug him back. I didn't know if anything was broken on him.
How long you guys been out here? Overnight.
He was covered with soot, he had all the black all over him. He looked like a mess, basically, but a happy mess.
Come on, I see it.
The other guy was sitting down,
Burnt real bad.
and he was so glad to see us. He was crying.
This guy's in bad shape.
Both of them had pretty serious burns and maybe some very severe frostbite.
Thank you for finding us.
I thought it was unbelievable that they survived the night before. It was a very cold night, and they were all burned up and busted up. They were lucky to be alive.
What's your name? Mark.
We began to talk and introduce ourselves, and I remember Mark saying something like, you get to go to heaven for this.
We got ski patrol here, guys.
Once I got to the top of the knoll, I could see the fuselage of the plane and the two passengers. And I then became very excited, saying, this is it. These are the two people that everyone's been looking for.
Dispatch, this is 107. I am with the wreckage of the plane that went down yesterday afternoon. Both passengers are alive.
Considering they had fallen from the sky and spent the night in the woods, they were in excellent shape.
My snowmo was parked.
I'll never forget that phone call. I was just so relieved and couldn't believe it that I just kind of fell to my knees and thanked God.
Jared and Mark were taken to Rutland Regional Medical Center, where they were both treated for burns and frostbite. Jared had also suffered a broken wrist.
I just had to touch him. I couldn't believe he was there.
I thought about you all the time up here and all what you told me. To be positive, and because of that, we made it.
Just so glad to have you. All I could say was, you were really on a mountain. You came off a mountain. And he says, I'm here. I'm here.
Mark's frostbite was more serious, and his burns more severe. Mark's girlfriend, Teresa Mitchell, came to see him.
I wouldn't have recognized him, except he looked up at me and smiled. He still had the same smile. How you doing? Better than you.
We could never figure out why we lived at all. Shouldn't have. I've seen crashes where there was a lot less impact, where there was no fire, where a lot less things went wrong, and the people did not live.
I decided to take the airplane straight in as slow as possible in anticipation of the crash. I attempted to go between trees and take the wings off the airplane to leave my fuel load behind me.
One wing went off, the other one didn't. So when I smelled the gas, I said, oh my God, we're in deep trouble. There was nothing but smoke and flames and burning, and I could feel my skin shrivel.
The right wing had bent backwards and blocked our exit from that side.
We had just filled the plane up with gas, and the one right tank was right below us.
We survive a crash, we survive a fire, and we're basically going to freeze to death out here if they didn't come and find us soon.
I was cold immediately, and I only had a t-shirt on. So Jerry gave me the hooded sweatshirt. When I put it on, he looked at me and he says, oh God, don't die, don't die.
Although Mark is scarred from his burns and both he and Jared suffered some nerve damage from frostbite, they have otherwise fully recovered.
To say it's a religious experience doesn't do it justice. It was miraculous, but all the good luck and all the things that happened in our favor wouldn't have meant anything if it hadn't been for the guys that trudged in there and found us.
Uh-oh.
How do you say to somebody, you know, my whole life I owe to you now?
Nice to meet you again.
There's just no real easy way to repay that.
Hey, how are you? Going? Pretty good.
You guys look great.
They took the extra effort, and I will be forever grateful to them.
Fred.
I think they're wonderful people. I think it takes a lot to do what they did. And I'm eternally grateful.
Mark and Teresa were subsequently married and are expecting their first child in December.
The days that used to rush by don't rush by anymore. I always get the opportunity to look at the sky, the trees and grass, and to look at people differently. It made it easier for me to go out of my way for other people. So it's given me a lot more joy back to my life.